Hi, I'm Carl Segno, and we're here with the Open Source News. As many of you will be aware, there is a worldwide trend of urbanization. This year, more than 50% of the world's population will live in cities. Despite that, there's also been a counter-trend, especially among young people, which constitutes a move back to the land. We're here for our second interview with Alina D'Amelia to talk about that phenomenon. We're here again with Alina D'Amelia, live from Turin. Thanks for being with us, Alina.
Thank you.
And I want to take a whole different subject from the last thing we talked about, being Lisbon in Italy and all that. Last year, actually it was this year, in January and onward, we lived together in Ireland, and you milked about, what, like several hundred cows for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I just went working on a milking farm. You were milking about 200 cows a day, and I was basically in charge of the cows. So helping them getting born and feeding them. It was about 50 cows every day.
And you grew up in Rome, right? Like urban...
Exactly. I'm an urban girl. I lived in Rome until I was 20, and my only contact with country living was a small garden in my backyard when I lived up in the countryside in Italy or in Vancouver, and my contact with big animals was only with my home cat. So I had no experience whatsoever about cows or cows.
So what did it? What made you want to go work in the agricultural sector?
Well, I guess that growing up in Rome was very traumatic for me, and I felt very alienated working, studying in Rome, and I felt it wasn't natural to me, so I knew I needed to live in the countryside. And I really had to go against my family. They still think that Rome it's a nice place where to live. I think Rome is a nice place for tourists, but 5 million people crammed in a city like that is just too much for me. So I thought that I wanted to live in the countryside, and I loved the countryside. Then I thought that I also liked to work with animals and work in the countryside, and I thought cows, and I thought let's go try milk cows and feed cows, and I loved it.
What were some of the difficulties you faced, like I guess in terms of personal moral challenges and that kind of thing with working on kind of a big industrial...
In terms of moral, I'm vegetarian, so I'm basically against industrial farming. But I'd like to go into organic farming one day, so I thought I looked a lot for work on organic farming, but as for it is now, it's mostly run by people who have volunteers helping them. They don't hire people, and the only paid job I found was in a traditional farm, which wasn't even a farm very big. It was only 200 cows, so it was still run by only one man, a family helped by his old mother and me. So it was a very small business, and he's very human towards the cows. He loves the animals. So it wasn't that bad on a moral level. There wasn't any mistreat against the animals. But obviously you have to take a calf away from his or her mother when it's born, so that the cow can go in the milking line, and so that you can get milk. Otherwise the calf would drink the milk from the cow, and you wouldn't get any milk to sell. So if you want milky cows, you have to take the calf away from the mother and feed the calf on replacement milk. So it's powdered milk.
Right. Right. Let's just talk for a second about cattle and Ireland and the Irish economy and that kind of thing. You were saying that lately there's been traces of, what was it, dioxin found.
Exactly. Lately they found traces of dioxin in cattle, pigs coming from Ireland. They stopped importing meat, milk, pig's meat from Ireland to Italy, and they're starting checking all the farms. They're probably closing down lots of farms for controls.
Okay, what do you think that's going to do to Irish farmers and...
It's going to be very bad, I think, because Irish farming was already at risk because of the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty basically opened up Europe to the import of meat and milk coming from the Americas, as to say United States, Argentina, and Brazil. And the milk and the meat coming from these countries, it's very cheap compared to the European meat.
Right.
And it's going to kill, basically, the European agriculture. So the agriculture in Ireland was already in a bad spot, and this is going to put it in an even worse spot.
Okay, actually, you bring up the Lisbon Treaty. I know neither of us is an expert because it's a completely unreadable, horrifically complicated document, but the Irish just a while ago, in June, voted down the Lisbon Treaty, and now they've been asked to go to the polls again. Do you think farmers like...
Yeah.
It was Ignatius, right? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Do you think farmers like Ignatius, because they've been offered other like little concessions, like they'll get to keep their own commissioner and a few decisions about abortion and little piddling stuff like that. But do you think rural people are still going to vote no based on this problem with agriculture?
Absolutely, because, you know, Ireland is one of the least country in Europe that is still based a lot on agriculture. So they are very aware that if they change laws on agriculture, it's going to be very bad for their economies. So it means that there are still lots of farmers. They're raising cattle, sheep, and they don't want their meat and milk to be in danger. So I think that they're going to keep on voting no. You know, we didn't have the opportunity in Italy to vote for it. They did. And I think Italian would have voted no the same, but we don't have that many farmers in Italy now. Ireland is very different for that.
Well, it's really neat that you mentioned that you didn't have the opportunity in Italy to vote for Lisbon, because in the last interview we were talking about how one of the things you can do outside of Italy to give Italians and other people who don't have too much access to democracy hope is for other countries to assert their democratic rights. And in a sense, we were all sort of celebrating when they voted down Lisbon because it seemed like the Irish people taking a stand when nobody else in Europe had a voice. So it's neat in that sense. That's all the time we have for the first half of our interview with Alina D'Amelia live from Turin on the subject of the green movement and agriculturalism in Europe. Please join us for the second half of the interview here on the Open Source News.